Hey guys, well, today is September 11th, 2016. It's the 15-year anniversary of 9/11. And, I know I'm making this kind of late in the day, but better late than never. I'm making this to commemorate, first of all, remember all the innocent people who were lost that day. And especially to feel for those who lost one or more friends or loved ones in those unnecessary attacks. And a day that I know in my experience, while I was only 12, it caused a lot of trauma. I couldn't imagine how the insides of those Twin Towers were when they were burning, and then the thought of them collapsing, 110 stories, 2 buildings coming down, very traumatic. Such a thing was unthinkable before it happened. The thought that somebody would fly a plane into a building, much less 3 planes, and a 4th one that was attempted to fly into a building. The Twin Towers, where the vast majority of the deaths came, and seeing sickening images of people jumping or in some cases falling out of the buildings. Even nowadays, I can't, if a video were shown of somebody falling, I still look away, which I still can't stomach that. In addition to the loss of innocent lives that day, it launched a war which got underway less than a month later, and still going on today with no end in sight. So just the thought that a never-ending war, or a war that's not ending for a very long time, was caused by this, that such an event, such an outrage could happen. The fact that, there's a reason it was called the day the world changed forever. Not just the day the United States changed forever, but the whole world, because, it revealed these people who don't like other people because either they got something, whether it be religion or it be because we're protecting an allied country like Israel, or it could be anything, but many innocent people that were just going to work or visiting people at work or even just touring the area fell victim that day, or fell victim on planes traveling for various reasons. And it's still hard to believe in nowadays the effects. In addition, there are people who have been, even nowadays, are dying because of something they breathed in from the Twin Towers site. So even if they didn't necessarily die on that day, they're still essentially became victims of 9/11. And in addition, the effect, has been very bad. The situation where, let's say you're flying somewhere, airport security is much different. Before 9/11, there was still security that was simply going through a metal detector. Now, it's X-ray or some sort of scan machine. Of course, it's not all 9/11, it's various other terror attempts that have happened since then as also. But there's this group of people called TSA, it's Transportation Security Administration. It handles all the security at the United States airports. Well, that wasn't always the case. Before 9/11, they didn't exist. So you're wondering, well, then who was that security at the airports before then? Well, apparently each airport had their own separate private security. But nowadays, it's all one administration. And I'm not saying they don't have the best interest to keep people safe. I mean, I like to be safe. Unfortunately, some restrictions can be frustrating. Again, it's the terrorists who are to blame. For instance, I know this was years ago, but it was like about a year or so after. It wasn't 9/11, it was some other instance that I had to fly to a wedding. I had like 3 or 4 bottles of liquids, and I was only allowed to keep one of them. And what was really unfair is they didn't give me a way of getting them back, like either keeping them in the airport or mailing them to my house, which rumor is that that's what they're supposed to do, but the TSA person I encountered did not do that. Even more of a surprise because it had, like on the way back, I was forced to give up nail scissors, and I know you're going to say, well, it was a sharp item, but I think the big surprise was it made it the first time, so you don't ever expect a return flight to have such an issue. But the point is, TSA issued. I mean, there have been worse issues. I'm not saying that TSA doesn't have, as a system agency, doesn't have the best interests out, but unfortunately, since it's a big thing, there are individuals there that can make the whole thing look bad. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of controversies. But anyhow, I mean, that day, innocence was stolen. Innocent lives were taken. A war that has no end in sight was launched because of that. And smaller but still sad things have happened. I mean, there was somebody who had permission to go on to scale New York City area bridges. He lost his privilege on September 11th, 2001. Again, not because of him, but the level of trust was essentially destroyed that day. Before that day, if people wanted to explore something, I don't mean explore someone else's house or someone's actual office suite without their permission, but I mean explore an area where multiple groups of people go, like whether it be a what was it called, like the hallways, lobby, and other unique areas of an office building, whether it be certain public attractions. I mean, there's observation decks, which you're probably wondering, why am I bringing that up? There's the new One World Observatory, got Top of the Rock, got the Empire State Building. Well, not all news is good. In Boston, they had John Hancock Tower had an observatory on the 60th and top floor of the building. That shut down on 9/11. Well, a lot of observation decks. In fact, they probably all closed that day. Only this one never reopened and has no intention to. In fact, I looked up on the internet, just a mere, according to the day that was listed, just a mere 2 days after 9/11, they intended to keep that thing closed permanently. And apparently the John Hancock Tower in Boston switched ownership and had made some sort of a deal to keep that deck closed, which was just a nasty thing, basically a terrible thing that they've closed these things down. And I mean, again, it's one thing to close things down for a temporary amount of time, but some places have gotten extremely paranoid, like John Hancock Tower, to close that observation deck down. In addition to the John Hancock Tower in Boston, the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco closed its observation deck down, essentially permanently, or at least for a very long time. It's basically like the John Hancock Tower. The only difference is they did put in a virtual observation deck to make up for it, though it's not the same thing as you're physically on the ground floor, but you're looking through, I guess, telescopes that show the view from the top of the building as if you were up there, but you're really not. So, I mean, the level of trust has gone way down to the general public, even though, I mean, not everybody is a terrorist. In fact, most people aren't, but people are getting punished for it, which is really sad. It's the level of trust has been really shattered. A lot of innocence was taken away that day, and I mean, there are various other things that are absolutely harmless that were essentially shut down. Now, I mean, some people, like, if you have an unusual hobby like riding and filming elevators or trains, that's gotten very restricted. Places have, like I mentioned, office buildings before. Well, it seems like mostly every office building in New York that's over 30 floors has turnstile off their elevator banks. Some that are below 30 floors have even done so. In addition to New York City, Chicago has gotten like that. I think Boston's like that. And for a time, people in LA had it rough, but I hear LA's getting better. However, New York City, Chicago, and Boston have really felt a lot. And of course, with Boston, the 2013 marathon bombing only made things worse. I mean, these terrorists, they take innocent lives, they cause wars, they cause essentially such a level of security to where anything unusual is a no-no, even if it's totally harmless. And I mean, the intolerance, the trust level is just so shattered. And of course, the idea about why harmless people should be able to explore stuff, it's not only for their enjoyment, it's not only because they like it and stuff, but it's also to not let the terrorists win. I mean, this is just, it's frustrating. I mean, 9/11 has caused a lot of things, and they're all bad. The worst being the loss of life, the going down to where people can't, like it's not easy at airports anymore. I mean, it can still fly and stuff, but I'm always nervous going through security, because I mean, they have had times where they randomly take items away. There's places like at Newark Airport. There was the recent time I was riding the AirTrain, and somebody at one of the stations told me I couldn't film, which was, again, a nonsense, but of course it's post 9/11 paranoia. So it's just, I mean, the way photographers have been treated, even though photography has nothing to do with 9/11 or any terrorist attack, has been terrible. It's a lot was taken away. A lot of restrictions, a lot of bad things. Worst was, of course, the loss of life. The next worst, I mean, and again, for those of you who are into sports, you gotta go through security checks. It's almost like an airport if you're gonna go into a football game or even a baseball game. It's, more public areas are going through that as well. I mean, it's just become essentially a terrorist-minded society. I'm not saying I blame the people setting up the security, but it's just this terrorism has caused a lot of things. It's, again, this war that will it ever end? Even though I gotta think it'll end eventually, but it could take like 50 years. It could take 100 years, I don't know. I mean, this is just, it's very sad. And now, in addition, not just 9/11, but the recent attacks in Paris, Brussels. I mean, the instance that happened this past June in Orlando, the attack down there, San Bernardino. I mean, there are all these major issues, and it seemed like seems unstoppable, even though there's got to be a way to stop it, but there's just a lot has gotten out of control, and it needs to get better. And the only thing I can say is, hopefully, if you do pray, to pray that this hell will end. the war, these unnecessary shootings. I mean, there's the issue happening with police and civilians. It's just sickening. Anyhow, God bless all the innocent people who lost their lives either on 9/11 or in any of these terrorist attacks or in the war. God bless the families and friends of those people, and God bless America. Stay safe, everyone.